Hello there. Welcome back to Just Sharon with your host, Sherry Murphy. Today, the topic is feedback. I remember the first time I got feedback that I did not like. I was on a cheerleading team when I was little, and I remember we were all holding a position with our arms, like our arms up in the air. And the coach came over to me and told me that I was holding my hands incorrectly. I felt embarrassed. I felt flawed. I felt humiliated, and I felt imperfect. So that was kind of like my introduction to myself of my perfectionism and how much I did not want to have anybody telling me that I wasn't doing something correctly. Feedback is crucial when it comes to us wanting to be a better version of ourselves. I walked into a school building one time and I was headed there for the day to sit and chat with teachers. They were going to come into the room and we'd done a training together with Quantum Learning, and they were going to talk about things in their classroom, and I was going to support them and coach them and help them and remember this and try this, and just to help them, have better success in their classroom. So I'm walking through this building, and the principal is saying to me, like, we have a great staff. This is it's amazing here. We get along so well. The atmosphere is phenomenal. So she's telling me this, and I'm like, oh, great. Awesome. So I sit down, and the first group of teachers came in, and what they had to say was completely opposite of what was said by the building leader. What I did all day was kind of act like a therapist, because they all came in and they were like, okay, do you have any advice? It is toxic here. We get singled out. There's favorites. And I was just sitting there just in shock. After that day, I thought to myself, like, wow, like one person, the leader of the building thought things were this way, and those that work under her thought something completely different. And it just put this thought in my mind of like, where in my life do I think I'm doing okay or not doing okay? And somebody else, or the person I'm working with or for, or whatever the case may be, has a different perspective. So feedback. When I was hired by Quantum Learning, one of the things that I was very grateful for was the fact that it had a culture of feedback. So when we would do presentations, and then after the presentation, you stayed up front and you got gems and opportunities. Gems are clearly things that shine in you or that you do very well. And a gem doesn't mean you got it, don't worry about it. It means it's an opportunity to see how effective that is and where else can you use that. Like, that's a skill, it's a talent, so use that to your advantage. Use it more frequently. And then an opportunity is an opportunity for growth or to get better results. I was really thankful that I got some positive experiences with feedback. So then as I continue going on, I realized that I can take feedback when it comes to work. However, one part of my life that I was curious about was that of my personal life. When I served my students as an educator, I began asking for feedback. First, I started at the end of the year, and then when I got that feedback, I was like, well, shoot, that would have been helpful to know earlier in the year. So then I did it every semester, and then I did it every quarter, and I just kept asking for it more and more frequently until eventually I just would stop, pause, and be like, how did that lesson go yesterday? What did I do? What worked for you? What could I do better? And just getting more and more feedback from my students in the moment, in the days, led me to serve my clients or my students better. Then heading home to my home, I'm now a mom, right? I'm a mom to 3 kids. I'm a wife to my husband. I'm a friend. And so the idea of asking for feedback lets us in on another perspective, because we are reflective. Humans are reflective. We are reflective people. We think about how we did things. When you leave conversations, sometimes we're kind of hard on ourselves when we're reflecting, like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or that was too whatever, and I took too much of the spotlight, or whatever. We reflect frequently negatively. So try and get some positive reflections in there too. But also just, do we ask for feedback? So I started using this in my home, where I was just driving with my daughter the other day, and I was like, hey, when that happened and we did, that whole situation went down, like, would you have feedback for me? Like, how did I do as a mom? What worked? Did you feel supported? And my kids will give me feedback. Now, I was reading an article with the Harvard Business Review, and one of the things they were talking about with feedback is that it can be scary and people are afraid of it because they're a fear of being criticized or a fear of being imperfect. I'm not going to lie. I am constantly working on seeing the gifts of my imperfections, right? My arm was turned the wrong way with cheerleading. I wanted to be perfect. I want to be a perfect mom. I want to be a perfect daughter. I want to be a perfect wife, a perfect friend. So I'm working on getting over and understanding and embracing imperfections. So if we're gonna ask for feedback, we're gonna get it. So just know that. I also heard in a talk the other day that this gentleman says you can always ask for quick feedback by just simply saying something like this. So on a scale from 1 to 10, what would you rate this service? Whatever it is, whether it's a business service, whether it's whatever it is, how would you rate, my service to you? And so you give them a scale on a scale of 1 to 10. And if the person says something less than a 10, you just do a simple follow-up question with, so what could I do to make it a 10? Okay, the other day I was just doing a training, and I just said, so what is working so far for you today in this training? What's working and what could be better? And then people wrote it down on Post-it notes, and then they went off to break so that I could then read the feedback and try to adjust to better serve. Now there's a lot more on feedback, right? There's feedback that is helpful. There's feedback that's not helpful. But just wanted to share a quick thing of have you ever considered even asking your husband or wife, hey, what do you have feedback for me as your wife? What would you say? Again, if you ask for it, you're going to get it. So we need to be brave. Some of us may need to do some self-work before we can even tolerate the feedback. But if you've ever noticed that someone's giving you and you're like, oh, I hate it when people say that about me. Wonder why that keeps coming up. So be brave, ask for feedback, and cheers to a journey to better ourselves.